Welcome back, everybody. Ready to dive into some logic and critical thinking today. I feel like, it's one of those things that,
It's so relevant.
yeah, like, you see it everywhere, especially online. It's like,
Everyone's an expert these days.
exactly. And everyone's got an opinion, but like,
Are they good opinions? That's the question.
right. That's what we're going to find out. So this deep dive, we're using excerpts from a college course on logic and critical thinking.
So real deal stuff.
Oh yeah, this is like the fundamentals. And I gotta say, going through this material, even I was like, whoa, I need to up my logic game.
Oh, it's so easy to fall into those traps. Those bad arguments, those fallacies.
Oh yeah, we're gonna name and shame some of those. But first, we gotta build a solid foundation, right? Like, what even is a good argument?
Okay, so the source material defines an argument as basically an attempt to convince someone of something. Like you're trying to get them to see your point of view.
Right, so it's not just about like shouting your opinion the loudest, right?
Yeah. No. It's about using reasons, using evidence to support your claim.
Okay, so it's like building a case. Like in a courtroom, you've got to present your evidence to the jury to convince them.
Exactly. And that evidence, those are what we call premises. They're the building blocks of your argument.
Premises, okay, got it. But what if, like, someone's using premises that are just totally bogus? Like, how do you even know if you're starting on solid ground?
Well, there's this thing called the true premises test. It's asking, are the reasons you're giving actually true? Are they based on facts, on evidence, or are they just, made up?
I was thinking about this the other day. Someone was arguing that we should ban all coffee because it makes people jittery. Like, okay, it makes me jittery, but does that mean it's a universal truth?
That's a great example. It might be true for some people, but it's not a universally true premise. And for an argument to be strong, those premises, those foundational pieces of evidence, they've got to hold up.
So it's like building a house, right? If your foundation is weak, if those premises are shaky, the whole thing is going to collapse.
Precisely. You need a solid foundation of true and relevant premises.
Okay, but I'm thinking even with a solid foundation, you can still build a pretty wonky house, right? Like
Yeah.
the structure itself could be messed up. Maybe the roof is on sideways or the walls are all crooked.
That's a great analogy. And that's where the proper form test comes in. So even if the premises are true, are they actually connected in a logical way? Does the evidence actually lead to the conclusion?
Okay, so even if someone's throwing facts at me, I got to make sure those facts actually make sense together. Like they could be cherry-picking data or just making these leaps of logic that don't really connect.
Exactly. It's like saying cats are mammals, dogs are mammals, therefore cats are dogs.
Yeah.
The individual premises are true, but the logic connecting them is flawed. And that's a fallacy, a bad argument dressed up in fancy clothes.
Oh, the fallacies. Can't wait to get into those. But first, where do these premises even come from? Is it just like anything goes?
Not exactly. There are different types of premises. Some are based on observations, what we can see and experience directly. The source material calls these empirical premises.
So like if I look out the window and see it's raining, that's an empirical premise.
Yep, that's direct observation. But sometimes it's indirect, like if you read an eyewitness account of something. Our source material had this great example of, I think it was an Eskimo woman, testing different knives for cutting salmon. She was observing how quickly they dulled, which was evidence for which type of knife was better.
Right. So it wasn't her using the knives, but she was still getting firsthand information based on what she saw. So even secondhand accounts, as long as they're based on observation and the source is credible, those can be solid premises.
Right, think of it like in a trial. Eyewitness testimony, it's indirect, but if it's reliable, it can be pretty powerful evidence.
Got it. Makes sense. But then there are these other premises that aren't about observations, right?
Right.
What about those that are more about definitions?
Ah, yes, those are definitional premises, and
Right.
they're all about clarity. It's like a triangle has three sides. Pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, unless you're in some weird advanced math class where they're like, well, actually, a triangle.
Huh. That's true. And that's why it's so important to make sure we're all on the same page about what words mean. Otherwise, we're just talking past each other. It's like arguing about freedom or justice when you and I have totally different ideas of what those words even mean.
Oh, that happens all the time. And then there's, of course, the whole world of experts, which,
Oh, boy.
yeah, because, like, anyone can call themselves an expert these days, right?
Yeah.
Especially online.
That's the challenge. The source material gives us some things to consider. First, credentials. Does this person actually have the training and experience to be considered an expert in this area?
Right. So just because someone has a lot of followers on Twitter doesn't mean they're an expert on, like, vaccines or economics.
Exactly. And then there's reliability. Do they have a track record of being accurate? Are they biased in any way? And most importantly, is there a consensus among experts in that field?
Okay, so just because one doctor says something on a talk show, it doesn't make it medical gospel.
Not at all. One voice doesn't equal truth. Our source material talks about this idea. I think they used Einstein as an example. A brilliant physicist, but maybe not the best person to ask about, I don't know, relationships or something.
Although if Einstein gave me physics advice, I'd probably take notes.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
But it's about recognizing the right kind of expertise, And that's something to keep in mind as we move on to those sneaky fallacies.
Oh, I'm ready for those. Hit me with the bad arguments.
Let's do it.
So we've talked about how arguments are built, like with those premises and conclusions. And we've talked about making sure those premises are actually true and not like some flimsy foundation. But I'm thinking now about the words themselves, like the language we use. Even with perfect logic, it feels like things can get messed up if the words are, I don't know, slippery.
It's so true. We often just assume we all mean the same thing when we use words. But if you don't define your terms carefully, you can end up having these circular arguments that just go nowhere.
It's like that whole arguing semantics thing. But sometimes those semantics really matter. Like if you're talking about legal contracts or even just like doctor's diagnoses, you need to be precise.
Absolutely. And that's where the source material talks about these two culprits, ambiguity and vagueness.
Yeah.
Ambiguity is when a word or phrase has multiple possible meanings. Remember those crazy newspaper headlines? Squad helps dog bite victim.
Oh my gosh, those are classic. Like, did the squad help the dog bite the victim? Did they help the victim who was bitten? It's like a recipe for disaster.
Right. And that's how ambiguity can just completely derail a conversation, even if everyone's trying to be logical. Then there's vagueness, which is when the boundaries of a word's meaning are kind of fuzzy. Like, what does rich even mean? At what dollar amount do you go from not rich to rich?
That's a question I'd like answered. But yeah, it's subjective, and that subjectivity, that can cause so many problems.
It really can. And that's where those technical definitions can be so helpful. They're like specific tools for making things clear, like in science or law or medicine.
Yeah, like you need those precise tools for those fields, right? Like you can't be vague about what dead means in a medical context.
Exactly. The source material points this out. It's like even a simple word like dead can have so many different meanings, depending on if we're talking legally, medically, philosophically.
We need a universal translator, not just for different languages, but for our own language.
That's a great idea. And it all comes back to being aware, right? Paying attention to those nuances of language. Technical definitions, that's one way to add precision. But then there's also this whole emotional side of language.
Oh, yeah. Because words can be weapons too, right? They can be used to manipulate, not just to inform.
Absolutely. Think about the difference between saying, he passed away peacefully versus he was brutally murdered. They could be describing the same event, but they evoke such different emotions.
It's like some words are whispers and some words are shouts. And sometimes those shouts can drown out any logic or reason.
Exactly. And that's what we call the appeal to fear fallacy, where someone's trying to scare you into agreeing with them instead of actually presenting evidence. Like those political ads that are all doom and gloom if the other candidate wins.
Or those home security commercials, the ones that make you think there's a burglar behind every corner.
Exactly. They play on our fears, not our logic. And then, on the other side of the spectrum, there are euphemisms.
Oh, yeah, those are the words we use to make things sound less bad. Like instead of saying, we're firing a bunch of employees, a company might say, we're right-sizing our workforce.
Right. Makes it sound nicer, even though it's the same thing. But sometimes euphemisms can be used to hide something truly awful. Like the source material gave the example of ethnic cleansing, which is just a euphemism for genocide.
Ugh, yeah, that's scary. It's like they're trying to make the unacceptable sound acceptable. It reminds us that we can't just take words at face value. We have to think critically about what's actually being said and what's being left unsaid.
You got it. And that leads us to another important tool, recognizing those rhetorical devices.
Ah, yes, the tricks of the trade. So we're not just looking at what the words mean, but how they're being used to persuade us.
Exactly. Things like metaphors, similes, rhetorical questions. They can be very effective in making language memorable and powerful, but they can also be used to manipulate.
It's like adding special effects to an argument. It might look flashy, but it doesn't necessarily make the argument itself any stronger.
Perfect analogy. We got to be able to see through those rhetorical flourishes and focus on the substance of the argument.
It's like judging a singing competition. We need to focus on the voice, not all the pyrotechnics and glitter. Okay, so we've got to be aware of those subtle emotional cues, those linguistic tricks. But I'm also wondering, how do we put all of this together? How do we actually use these tools to analyze arguments in the real world?
Great question. That takes us to our final part, where we explore categorical logic, a powerful system for analyzing arguments about categories and how they relate to each other.
Categorical logic sounds intense. I'm picturing those Venn diagrams with the overlapping circles, like, we're going to categorize all the things.
Exactly. Get ready to dive into the world of categories and relationships. It's going to be a fascinating ride.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about those logical fallacies. We've untangled some of those tricky words. We've even felt the power of those emotional appeals, like how language can really pack a punch. And now it's time for the grand finale. Categorical logic. I'm already picturing like those Venn diagrams from back in the day, those circles all overlapping, sorting the world into these neat little boxes.
I love that visual because that's what categorical logic is all about. It's about understanding how different categories relate to each other
Yeah.
and how we can make logical statements about those relationships.
So it's like those brain teaser puzzles, but instead of like individual clues, we're working with these whole groups of things.
Exactly. And by understanding how those groups connect, we can avoid making all sorts of faulty assumptions.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example, like a real-world categorical logic puzzle.
All right, let's say we're talking about cats and animals that purr. A classic categorical statement would be, all cats are animals that purr. That tells us that the cat category fits entirely inside the animals that purr category.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like all cats purr, so they must belong to that bigger group of purring creatures. But I'm guessing it doesn't work the other way around. Like if I hear something purring, I can't automatically assume it's cat, right?
You got there could be other purring creatures out there that aren't cats.
Yeah.
Maybe some kind of, I don't know, super chill lizard.
Haha, a purring lizard. I love it. But yeah, it shows why we got to be careful with those assumptions. So if all cats are animals that purr is one type of statement, what are the other ways we can connect these categories?
Well, the source material lays out four basic types of categorical statements. We've got the universal affirmative, like our cat example. Then there's the universal negative, which is like saying no cats or dogs. That one's pretty clear cut. There's no overlap between those two categories.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that one. Though I'm sure someone out there could try to argue that, like, cats and dogs are secretly the same species or something.
Oh, I'm sure. But categorical logic gives us the tools to see through those kinds of arguments. Now, we also have particular statements, which are about some members of a category, not necessarily all of them.
So instead of these big sweeping statements about all or none, we're getting a bit more nuanced.
Exactly. A particular affirmative statement would be, some cats are black. It acknowledges that there are black cats out there, but it doesn't say that every cat has to be black.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Otherwise, we'd be leaving out all those tabby cats, those calico cats, all the beautiful variety of the feline world. What about the particular negative?
That would be something like, some cats are not black. Again, we're not making a statement about all cats, just acknowledging that there are some cats out there that don't fit the black category.
Okay, so we've got these four building blocks. Universal affirmative, universal negative, particular affirmative, and particular negative. And by understanding how these statements work, we can start to analyze more complex arguments, right?
Precisely. One really common type of argument that uses these categorical statements is called a syllogism. It's basically a three-part structure,
Yeah.
two premises and a conclusion.
A syllogism. Ooh, that sounds so fancy. It's like we're about to wave our magic logic wands and make these brilliant deductions.
Haha, I love that energy. Here's a super classic syllogism. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal.
Oh, okay, I can see how that works. The first part sets up this relationship between men and being mortal. The second part tells us Socrates is a man. And then the conclusion just, like, naturally flows from that. If all men are mortal and Socrates is a man, then he must also be mortal. It's like a little chain reaction of logic.
Exactly. And syllogisms can get way more complicated, but the basic idea is the same. We use those established relationships between categories to, like, unlock new information. And they're not just for philosophers either. We use them in everyday reasoning, legal arguments, scientific hypotheses.
Wow. So we've gone from the foundations of arguments to the tricks of language and now to these like elegant syllogisms. It feels like we've been building this like mental fortress, brick by logical brick.
I love that analogy. And remember, it's not just about winning debates. It's about thinking clearly, being able to spot those bad arguments,
Yeah.
and making decisions based on logic, not just emotion or, whatever's trending on Twitter.
This deep dive has been amazing. It's like I've got all these new mental tools. It's like I'm seeing the world with a new set of lenses,
Yeah.
Sharper, more focused, and I'm inspired to keep learning more about this stuff.
That's what it's all about. And remember, critical thinking is a journey, not a destination. The more we practice, the better we get at spotting those fallacies, decoding those tricky words, and navigating this crazy world of information.
So, to all our listeners out there, keep asking those questions, keep challenging those assumptions, and keep those critical thinking muscles flexed. We'll see you on our next deep dive.